Well, hello everyone, and welcome to an exciting edition of AmpLIFEied Live. Today I have the privilege of having a phenomenal conversation I've been enjoying very much so far. I want to bring you in on a conversation with Dr. Heidi Haavik. Heidi, welcome, and thanks for being here for this program. This is one of those super important programs where we're not just sharing somebody's terrific work, we're sharing your terrific work and something I think that's going to have the potential to transform our profession and our future. So thanks for being here from the other side of the globe. You're
Thanks,
what,
Jason.
12 hours ahead of us? Or where are we in that
Yes,
timeline?
something like that.
You're in New Zealand right now?
I'm in the future.
Yes, you are in many ways.
I am.
What a perfect way to start things off. Instead of me spending a lot of time going through a long biography of yours, I'm just going to cut right to the chase and say, welcome, Heidi. And you are known, as far as I'm concerned, in the circles I travel in, as I think the most prominent chiropractic researcher worldwide. We have many of the same friends who all have mutual admiration. I think we're all part of the same fan club, which is why I'm so excited to have you here. Let me just start off by just asking you to sort of share what got you into chiropractic research. How did you get from where you are to where we are today? And then I'm excited as you're listening here and joining us that we'll also be talking about chiropractic research, some new exciting breakthroughs, and where we're going to be going in the future. But let's start with a little bit about your past and how you got here.
Well, I really only came out to New Zealand. I grew up in Norway, so I went out to New Zealand as a 20-year-old just to sort of revisit my mother's roots because my mum's a Kiwi. But, I had one of those odd moments when the plane landed in New Zealand and I just knew I wasn't leaving. I was really only meant to be there 6 months. I found out about the New Zealand College while I was there and started the very next year. So that was the second year that the college in New Zealand had even existed. And I'd really only been out there just to, travel around and have some fun. And I was going back. My dad's a medical doctor, so my entire family back home in Norway is very much into the biomedical model. But interestingly, my great-grandfather is one of the first 1,000 chiropractors ever to have graduated from Palmer College.
You're kidding.
So my grandmother in New Zealand, which was obviously his daughter, we were just, chatting away, and she was up until the age of 94, she was walking her dog, didn't take any medication at all, and driving her little her little red Mercedes.
That's awesome.
So just the lifestyle. And I got into chiropractic under care myself when I was out there in New Zealand, and found out about the school. I'd already been accepted into a couple of different programs in Norway, so I was really going to go back and start my university training back in Norway. But just got bitten by this bug, this chiropractic thing, and started the college. And then through college, this is where I got really excited in understanding how it works, because I had my own experiences with it. I obviously knew it worked, but I didn't understand how it worked. I had 3 really amazing lecturers. One that was phenomenal, teaching us technique, and then I had Bernadette Murphy, who taught us all the sciences. And I just thought this woman was just amazing. She was so smart. I was always a very curious mind, so I always had 101 questions, one of those annoying students that that pisses off all the lecturers with 100 questions. But Bernadette would always sort of very calmly explain to me what we did know and what we didn't know, and I couldn't get my head round, because we were also taught by our philosophy lecturer, Phil McMaster, who's now the president of the college. He would teach us all the philosophy that made perfect sense to me, but then I'd go to the scientists and ask, well, what do we know? And we knew nothing. Back in 99 when I graduated, we had a few experiments that showed we had a few milliseconds worth of reflexive changes when we adjusted the spine on, muscle EMG. And I'm like, well, how does that explain these amazing things that we see in practice? It doesn't explain it, So then it was just more conversations with Bernadette, and she managed to sort of twist my arm, and I didn't think I was smart enough to do a PhD, and she's going, yeah, you can do it. And I'm like, no. But I continued doing postgraduate studies just with her, just because I thought she was fantastic, and my entire ambition was to be her research assistant. One day a week, I was going to donate my time to the profession, and one day a week I was going to do research for Bernadette. So I did my PhD literally for that. But while we were doing these early studies for my PhD, One of our first studies we did, we already found these changes within the nervous system, recording brain waves when we were stimulating nerves that were lasting. The changes were lasting for up to half an hour, which was the length of time we were recording. So even then, this is the early 2000s, we'd shown more than what had ever been shown before. Not that we knew what it meant, but and then I was just bitten by the bug. It was just so exciting. We could literally see it on the screen, and I'd be jumping up and down. So it was, and then I just realized I was just born to do it.
That is amazing. So I know that one of the things that sort of inspired me to reach out to you is that there was a recent announcement Dr. Jerry Clum sort of put out about some breakthrough research. So share with us what's going on in chiropractic research today. What are you most excited about?
Well, the really, really cool thing about this latest study was that that first finding that we found in my PhD studies, this was sort of, early 2000s, I've repeated the study 3 times. We repeated it 3 times ourselves. I'm one of those people that I need to actually convince myself that what I'm finding is actually
Could it be?
Well, I don't want to go out there and bullshit. I don't want to give, I don't want to talk about things unless I know for a fact that this is what it is. So we actually repeated the study 3 times, trying to look at slightly different aspects. But this latest study that Jerry wrote about, we repeated the study that I did for my PhD in a medical professor's lab. So this is Asbjørn Moore Drews in Aalborg University Hospital. And it was in his laboratory with his bioengineer, Dina Leilik. I have to say it on record that she's the best scientist on the planet ever. Otherwise, she won't work with me again. So, Dina, you're just amazing. Anyway, so she did all the data recording and analysis. So it was very, very unbiased. If it's only a bunch of chiropractors doing it, there is those. It's the possibility that we could have, not done it ideally, or that we're biased, or that we're making it happen, which is partly why I wanted to repeat it. So anyway. So we repeated this study in Asbjørn's lab with Dina doing all the recording. She was very, very skeptical too, so it was almost quite funny. And we found the same findings. So this is the 4th time we've shown that when we adjust the spine, we are changing the way the brain is processing information from the arm. So we are changing brain function when we adjust the spine. And now that we've done that 4 times, and the 4th time in an unbiased lab, by medical professionals, then it's a fact. It is a fact that when we adjust spines, we change the brain. But the coolest thing is, when I was doing my PhD studies, we had this ancient old bioamplifier. The box, it's as big as a fridge, whereas nowadays, those amplifiers, they're like no bigger than this, right? So
isn't it just an app on your phone at this point, or?
Yeah. Just about,
right.
about, but it's not quite. But anyway, so we got this massive big bioamplifier that we recorded on, and I only had 6 channels. So we're literally recording 6 channels of, we've got some EEG at the back of the neck and a couple of channels on the head. Whereas in Asbjørn's lab, we were able to do 4 channels of EEG. So we've got the whole head covered in these, there's some photos on the press release thing there. And because we've got the whole head recordings, Dina and her super smart, the most intelligent, best scientist on the planet ever, she can actually calculate where in the brain the changes are taking place.
Wow.
So, so here I am able to do this kind of research where I can find out what changes in the brain, are the different parts of the brain talking to each other in a different way, or are some of the parts of the brain just changing its function? And what we were able to show is, so the 4th time we've seen the same finding, and Dina was able to calculate for us that this was happening at the prefrontal cortex. And this is huge, because your prefrontal cortex is like your little brain within your brain, basically. There's 2 parts, your cerebellum and your prefrontal cortex. It's the boss in the brain, basically. It's what helps you focus your attention and ignore all the sensory stimuli that are unrelated to what you want to do. It's your task-oriented systems. It's just unbelievable. It sort of explains pretty much everything that we've ever really seen in practice. How people's personalities can change, how their moods can change. It's probably in this top-down manner that we change the autonomic nervous system. Everything. It's very important in controlling pain. So any sort of even symptomatic development. I mean, if you focus on your pain, your brain actually learns to be in more pain. But when we are changing things like the prefrontal cortex, it changes what your brain focuses on, what you pay attention to. Everything can change. So it was absolutely friggin' phenomenal.
That is awesome, and obviously extremely exciting. So I don't want you to share everything here, because part of the reason I want people to watch this video is to encourage you to basically get to the Rubicon Conference, where you're going to be, for the first time, really sharing the results and implications of this study. We'll share more.
The implications, yeah.
Okay. So the Rubicon Conference is in London, March 11th through 13th this year, 2016. So you'll be going into detail about it there. But let's, if you're willing, dive into a little bit about what does it mean? You say change brain functions. I'm going to make the assumption you mean improve brain function. But what are the implications of that, just briefly here, and obviously you're going to go into a lot more detail at the conference?
Funny you actually bring up that question, because even the reviewers, it's just recently been accepted for publication in the journal Neuroplasticity, which, if you understand impact factors, it's got an impact factor of over 3.5. So we're absolutely stoked that it's gotten such a good publication. But even the reviewers kind of wrote back to us saying that the authors appear to assume that
that
these
this is a good thing,
are
right.
all positive.
That's right. That's right.
And should you potentially have a fairer, more balanced view on that, because the changes that we have seen, in the literature have been associated with certain conditions like Parkinson's and things like that. So we needed to have a very balanced approach. It's tricky. I know there's at least two people that live inside my brain. One is the extremely biased chiropractor, and I don't pretend not to be. I think chiropractic is amazing, and it's a lifestyle I've chosen for the entire family, and we love it. But at the same time, I have got the critical scientist. She does need a little bit of help occasionally to keep the chiropractor out of there. But we can't really fully say yet that it's all a positive change. This is where research really only takes one tiny little step at a time. I usually try and explain to chiropractors that each study, properly done, is like a little puzzle piece, and what we really need is probably 3 to 100 billion puzzle pieces to fully understand what's going on. And this is one little puzzle piece, actually 4 little puzzle pieces, but the 4 puzzle pieces are saying the same thing, and that's really quite important, that they're all sort of explaining the same thing. So now we need to look at, do we actually change prefrontal cortex? Do we when we adjust people's subluxations, do we change prefrontal cortex function in a positive way? So there's multiple more new studies that need to now take place to confirm that what we're showing is a positive thing. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense, yes.
Another thing that we can add into this, though, which is kind of important, is when we first found these changes, the original changes in my PhD, which is, I'm trying not to go technical here, but it's a waveform called N30. The peak size is changing; it's getting smaller, and we can record it when we stimulate a mixed nerve like the median nerve at the wrist, and then we record with electrodes over the scalp. So we record the way the central nervous system is processing that information. And when we're stimulating the mixed nerve at the wrist, it's at very, very low intensities. And we know that when we stimulate a mixed nerve at very low intensities, the first neurons that you actually stimulate or activate are your 1A afferents, your proprioceptive afferents. They're the ones that attach to your muscle spindles. And I know I've got a few big words in here now. But it basically means that in theory, we are changing the way the brain is processing proprioceptive information from the hand. Now, if you want to translate that clinically, it should mean, if it's a good thing, that we improve your brain's ability to know accurately where your limb is, where your arm is. So we followed it up with a study looking at that. So we looked at elbow joint position sense. And we literally did a study where we recorded elbow joint position sense pre and post adjusting the spine. And gets complicated here, only because we were having a little bit of difficulty with reviewers, because we were studying people that were asymptomatic. And there's a real, important reasons why we did that, because if someone's in pain and we adjust them, what tends to happen, right?
Most of the
They're
time,
in less pain.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and if we have a change in pain, there's a hell of a lot that changes in the brain as well, including all these measures that we were looking at.
Interesting.
So I couldn't study people in pain because I wasn't interested in what happens when we change pain. I was interested in when we adjust subluxations, what happens in the central nervous system. You with me?
Yes, I am.
So we then discovered that other scientists also look at asymptomatic people, but they tend to fall into a category either known as chronic tension, so that they've got ongoing issues with their spine, or a group that we have been looking at a lot is subclinical. So they're developing spinal issues, but on the day that we study them, they have no pain. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So what was kind of interesting when we did this elbow joint position study, because that was the first time it came up, was that we actually found people that didn't fit the category of subclinical. So they had never, ever in their life had any pain, any tension, any accidents, nothing to do with their spine. So we had a very healthy control group with no history of any spinal problems. And what was really, really interesting is this has set off another whole line of research that we've been looking at. Because when we look at people that have got no history of spinal problems and compare them with people that fall into that subclinical group, we've discovered all sorts of things. For one, people with subclinical issues, so people with spinal problems developing, they are less accurately aware of where their arm is. They have a very different motor control of their limb. So when they throw darts, this is a study Bernadette Murphy has been doing in Canada, their motor control of their limb is very, very different. So it's almost showing that when you are subluxated, but not fully, there's a few leaps of scientific thought processes here, but it's sort of, the idea is that when you start to develop problems spinally with subluxations, that over time, you get all sorts of, worse and worse problems with the spine, that this comes with a whole host of central nervous system dysfunctions. So your brain is less accurately aware of what's going on in your body. It doesn't control the spine the same way, right the way through to when you've got full-blown problems like chronic back pain. And then we know that your brain's got no idea what's going on in your lower back. It controls the lower back in a completely different way. It doesn't respond reflexively as it should, and so on and so on. So we think that there's a graded continuum of problems building up over time. And that's probably why, it goes into, my philosophy lecturer, Phil, was always talking about cleaning clean windows to keep them clean. So, adjusting spines, it might just it keeps the information from the brain to the body accurately, or if you even want to take it further from innate through to the body, at top notch at all times.
I love it. So if you, just as a reminder, if you haven't already, join Heidi and an amazing cast of presenters and speakers at the Rubicon Conference 2016 in London. And you can go to the rubiconconference.com to register and learn more. Heidi, help me understand. There's a lot of, I'll say my perspective, a spectrum. There are those that sort of don't really believe and or have an awareness of what they know are the possibilities of chiropractic unless it's chiropractically validated, which I think we would say we're sort of in the early stages of building large amounts of science to support. So they become are very confused and perhaps have a less than optimal sense of what it is that's possible for chiropractic care. And then you've got the other end of this continuum or spectrum of those that go, why are we wasting our time with all of this? We know it works, you know it works, why bother? So help me, why is this so valuable? And let's include into this conversation the value and the importance of what Raleigh Cook is doing with the Australian Spinal Research Foundation at spinalresearch.com. Help us understand the value and importance of all of this.
Yeah, I love those guys, by the way.
Me too.
Spinal research, they're just brilliant. They've helped support a lot of our studies. Anyway, so back to your question. I think that the work that we're doing with science is helping the entire spectrum. So let's start up one end. Which end shall I start with?
Your choice.
I don't really mind.
Your
Okay.
choice.
So let's start down with the. I think both ends are a little bit confused, to be perfectly honest. But if we go down the one end where I know it works, you know it works, so why should we bother with science? I think that they're letting a lot of people down because a lot of like, I'm not doing this research for the profession, to be perfectly honest. I'm really doing this research for all those people that don't have access to chiropractic care because we have been maybe too lazy or not able to provide them with scientific facts. People aren't necessarily going to go and try things unless it has been documented and validated and just shown how it works. I mean, we have for 120 odd years not actually until now been able to show how chiropractic works in a scientifically congruent manner, which means, people have to believe us. And I just don't think that's fair. There's a lot of people out there that shouldn't have to believe us to benefit from chiropractic care. Mm-hmm. So if we do science and we can document, like, I'm not out to try and prove chiropractic works, by the way, either. I believe it works. I know it works, So I'm like them too. I know it works. But I want to understand how it works, and I want to document how it works, because through that, through properly conducted scientific studies, then the rest of the world can also see how it works. And then they might actually, try it for themselves and for their families. I mean, we're showing that adjusting the spine seems to clear up the communication so that your brain is more accurately aware of what's going on in your body. Don't you think people might want that for themselves and their families?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but there is so much more that we do need to know, and we need to show that it actually works that way in children, and that, we're doing studies now looking at whether we improve children's ability to mentally rotate tasks in space. It's a prefrontal cortex function, and this mental rotation ability is also linked with, IQ changes. Looking at sensory motor integration in children is also linked with IQ. So if we're jumping again in leaps of faith here, what we're really showing is that we will make kids more connected, smarter, more intelligent, eye-hand coordination will improve. But of course, we've got to do those studies. You can't just, say it's the case. So these guys, I think, are doing the public a disservice by saying we don't need the science. We do need the science. It's not fair for people to have to believe in us. It's something that should be very clearly documented in collaboration with other scientists, medical doctors. I think that it can only be a good thing for the entire friggin' planet if we have more and more research that shows that if you add chiropractic care to just about anything, those patients are better off. I think we will also be, through the science, we will also improve our service to the public. And I think that's something that as a profession we're obligated to do, just morally. That, there are some people that might benefit more than others. There are some techniques that might be best for certain populations of people. And that's something that I feel are morally obligated to do. Yeah. So that's that end. And then if we go this end, I think that's quite sad too. I think that there are a lot of confused people, and that unless it's sort of been fully documented, then chiropractic shouldn't be applied. And I don't quite get that, because that's holding us to a standard that no other health profession has ever been held to ever in the history of mankind. I also think that we've got to be a little bit careful with the type of research that we do. I have seen some studies that get done where the conclusions are that chiropractic does not work for such and such, and you ask what the chiropractic intervention was, and it might have been a peripheral joint manipulation. And I think there's a little bit of danger in there, that again you're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and you're missing the point. And that's partly why I think the research that we're doing is so important, because as we show over and over again, it's been 15 years now, over and over again, that when we adjust the spine, yes, there's a hell of a lot more, puzzle pieces that need to be done, but when we adjust the spine, it seems to change the way the brain is functioning. We can shift away from needing to manipulate for a therapeutic outcome, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
I think it's when we do what we do, when we adjust the spine. Some people might adjust peripheral joints too, which I have absolutely no problem with, but it's when we do the art of chiropractic that we have these major changes in the brain. And interestingly, it seemed to be that the people that have the greatest history of spinal problems So they were the ones that had the biggest changes in the brain as well. So I think, there is this thing out there that if it's not broken, we probably can't fix it. So if people haven't got spinal problems, whether they feel it or not, I know you don't have to necessarily feel the spinal problems for there to be spinal problems, but if they haven't got spinal problems, we're probably not going to have clinical outcomes in those people. But I think there's also a lot of people out there with a whole range of problems that chiropractic would help with. Not cure everything and fix everything, but, if you had a major spinal problem and another clinical condition, there could have been some dysfunctional neuroplasticity that's gone on in there that's contributed to their clinical condition that we could improve. And I think this is partly why we've had a lot of problems with our clinical studies in the past too, that we haven't necessarily identified groups that had that clinical, say if you were studying headaches, right? That was your, actually let's take a different one because we know that they've got screwed up sensory motor integration, but say you had a whole group of people with a heart problem and you wanted to study them. I think in the past we've fallen into the trap of only isolating people that only had that heart problem and nothing else, and then studying whether chiropractic care helps. And funnily enough, we find that there's not such a big change. You with me? Mm-hmm. But if we'd maybe identified people that had that heart problem plus had a whole lot of spinal problems, that maybe the percentage of people that got better, and some of them a hell of a lot better, would be higher. You hear me?
I do. Yeah. I'm not a researcher, so I don't know the implications of what you can or cannot do, and why wouldn't we just do all of it? But I do get that we're at a very early stage of maturing the possibilities here.
And mainly the thing that's holding us back is money, which is why I love spinal research so much.
Well, let's talk about that. How does this work, and what can people listening who have any interest in contributing to the future of all of this do?
Well, see, I think the one thing that the profession don't really understand is how expensive research is to do. Like a lot of the work that we've done, it's basically fallen on the New Zealand College of Chiropractic to fund to a very large extent. And I just think that's a little bit unfair that our educational institutions, whose main job is to produce brilliant chiropractors, to then carry the burden. I think mainly they've done it because I was such a pain in the ass.
Thank you.
Stomping my feet and saying how important it is.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Ended up funding it. Like we've done a calculation in New Zealand that the little studies that we've done, many of in the last sort of 15 years, on average has cost the college about $200,000 each. So, that's a lot of money, New Zealand dollars. Spinal research, they've done a fantastic job being able to provide seed funding. So we've been able to co-fund with them. So they could provide up to sort of $100,000 per study. And then the New Zealand College has sort of shared the rest of the cost with them. But if it hadn't been for spinal research, like they've been really forward thinking because they've not wanted to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They've wanted to keep the chiropractic art, looking at the effects of when we do what we do, when we adjust subluxations, whatever that might be. From my perspective as a neuroscientist, a subluxation is purely and simply just a central segmental motor control problem. So the central nervous system is not controlling that spinal segment appropriately. And this is obviously leading to a whole lot of maladaptive changes in the way the brain processes all other sensory information. So I think we just clear up the communication. But anyway, back to spinal research. I think they've done such a great job because they've not wanted to sort of go and do more research where we sort of manipulate some peripheral joint and then look at whether that helps pain, which, I perfectly honestly think is a great idea too. I would quite like to do that, except I'm just too busy doing what I'm doing now thanks to funding like these guys, where we can actually look at my biggest passion is just understanding when we do what we do, what actually, how does that work? Not does it work, but how does it work? And that's the 2 lines of research. But if we have over 100 studies designed, ready to go. We have scientists all around the world that we've built up a reputation over the last 15 years. We seem to be quite fun to work with for some strange reason. I think we're a bit mad, the whole lot of us. But we literally have people sending in their CVs, really brilliant, PhD scientists. Some of them are, have got a medical degree or a dentist degree, and they're keen to come and work with us. We've got, projects coming out of our ears. We've even got, I'd say we have over 24. Just literally, their ethics is done. They're registered. We could start them tomorrow if we had the money, and we just don't have the money. And this is where anybody out there, whether they're patients of chiropractors and they love chiropractic, they can donate. The profession can donate. I must admit we're really amazed by the support we get from the profession, because we are currently donations currently fund 50% of the staff that we have that work with us.
Wow.
So the college funds 50% and the profession is funding 50%. But still, there's only so much 4 people can do.
That's exactly right. So, and that's where the Australian Spinal Research Foundation at spinalresearch.com comes into place. They're part of the funding mechanism, and I believe hopefully more and more colleges and the profession get on board, because it sounds like if we just had a little bit more fuel/finances, we could be learning a lot more, a lot faster.
Yeah, because it's not a lack of ideas, it's not a lot of expertise, it's not a lack of even equipment. It's literally comes down to we cannot pay the people to do it fast enough.
Right on.
Which is painful.
It absolutely is. And hopefully we'll continue to do some things that continue to raise awareness, because I don't think most people actually even know what is even going on. And if they do make a donation, where it's going, what implications it has, and so on. So maybe let's explore that just a bit for those that may be even considering. Where does this go? You said you're into the future, so give us a little peek. If you had an unlimited resource of funds right now, step us through with your imagination what's possible.
There's so many lines of research that I would just die to get into. But let me just outline sort of 3 overarching lines of research. I think the education, is really, really important. And what I mean here is, I believe, now I'm talking as a chiropractor, that skill really matters, Jason. I think it's not something you pick up on a weekend course. And there are other professions out there that might do a weekend course in manipulation and then maybe expect to get similar changes to what we can do. And I don't believe that's possible, but we need to see if that's the case. So I think there's a whole line of educational research that we need to explore the gurus in the field. So I'm communicating with several groups at the moment, and I'm hoping they will fund. I won't mention them just in case they don't necessarily want to be associated with us just yet. where I'd like to study the best of the best. The really gurus in the techniques within their fields. They've obviously taken it to a whole new level. I'd like to see, well, what can they achieve, within the brain of people when they do what they do. And I'd like to then look at students that have done a weekend course in it and see, is there a difference? And it could go so far that we could actually see whether our schools are producing students of a decent enough quality to be improving the communication between the brain and the body. There's a whole, you can see where I'm going with that one. I think that would be extremely exciting. I also think we need to look at then, when we're doing this research too, that the different techniques, do they have different outcomes or different mechanisms? Do they help for different groups of people better than other groups of people? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is something that I think is really, really important that we do. And then there's 2 other lines of research that I think is extremely important. It's the basic science and the clinical research. And if we sort of break them down into sort of real simple terms, the basic science looks at how something works. So I think it's very, very important that we as a profession scientifically understand and explore how our care improves people's lives, how it gives them more quality of life, how it improves their function. And that's the kind of research that is my baby. It's the thing that I've always been passionate about understanding. It's like the prefrontal cortex stuff. It's then following on that research to test then different types of prefrontal cortex function to see, do we improve that? Because then we're telling a really nice story that when we improve spinal function, we improve the way the brain then controls your whole body. And that's kind of what we believe is the case now. It's what makes most sense with all the work that we've done in the last 15 years. But just because it makes most sense right now doesn't mean that we should stop. This just you need to continue to explore it. But then you also need to do the clinical research. And I know a lot of the profession have been more wary of that because they feel like there's already enough pain studies out there, which is fine, but we need to understand what we do and say, for example, when we're adjusting subluxations, if people get better, why are they getting better? So again, that we understand who is it that we would help out of low back pain patients or neck pain patients, because I don't think it's just a segmental thing. I think the segment's important. I think adjusting the right areas of the spine are very important. I think the subluxation is an extremely important concept to us as a profession, but I don't think that we need to adjust T4 to affect the heart, if you're with me. I think that Merrick chart, I want to freaking throw that out. If I have my way in this lifetime, chiropractors will stop talking about a bone out of place squashing on a nerve and us relieving that pressure. Because most adjustments that we do, I don't think there is a squashed nerve component to it. And I'm not saying that you can't have a squashed nerve, but I think most of our effect is via the brain. So when we free up the spine, it communicates with the brain so that the brain is more accurately aware of what's going on. So our job is, to the best of our ability, get the whole movement in the spine working properly. I'm happy to do extremities and jaws and cranials and all the rest of it. But it's that ease. You want the ease back into the structure, which I think helps the communication, innate brain, body, all the way back again.
Right on.
Okay, so I think it's extremely important that we also do this clinical research, but you can almost combine it with the basic science, so that as you're exploring the populations, and then I mean everything. I'd like to look at preterm babies. I'd like to look, right the way through to the elderly. Some amazing studies that have shown that, you can stop functional decline in the elderly if they get chiropractic care. You can basically maintain their independence. This kind of stuff needs to be explored further. It doesn't just need to be about a condition like back pain. It can be about preventing falls or preventing injuries from developing in the first place. There's quite a lot of research in areas that we're looking at right now where the spine's, the brain's ability to sort of reflexively control the spine, switch it on and off, core muscles as it should, is probably a reason why people end up having injuries. That's actually extremely important for all those sports people out there, and they're totally asymptomatic. There's research out there that shows that in totally asymptomatic people, if they don't switch on their core muscles appropriately, they can go on to develop low back injuries, right? And we've shown in studies that a single session of adjustments can help improve switching on those core muscles appropriately. So there's a lot of links here that just need to be explored, and that's where I mean the clinical research. So it doesn't just have to be, pain, but it can be about function, but it can be about, preventing injuries. It can be about all the research that I think we need to do with pregnant ladies, babies being able to suck properly, all these functions that are sensory motor functions. I mean, there's research out there that shows that the mechanical input is just as important on, our whole body function as chemistry. It's just a different aspect. But medicine have been very good at studying the chemistry and not the mechanical input. But mechanical input is extremely important, and that's kind of obviously what we do best. But anyway, I could go on forever.
Well, and that's where people should go to the Rubicon Conference in order to be able to see you present this breakthrough research. I guess as we kind of wind down, if you had the ability, and I think you do, to connect with chiropractors worldwide, tens of thousands of chiropractors worldwide, what's your message to them? What do they need to know, and what should they be doing perhaps differently than they are?
I think we're the whole profession is extremely good at the arts. I think there's a couple of things that we could do better. One is potentially fight less amongst ourselves. I think it would be really, really quite wonderful if we could actually try and, instead of fighting about our differences, unite about our common ground. I think we've got enough common ground now with and even the research that we're doing, I believe, is bringing together those two sides, because it is informing both of them. And it's not really a threat to anybody. I think that would be quite good if we could unite more and fight less. But the second thing that I think is very, very important that we do is that we learn our science. Jason, I think we need to know our science, and we need to communicate our science. And it's something that I'm also very, very passionate about. And that's where that other side of what I do comes into it, is to literally help the profession learn how to communicate appropriately about science. And at the same time, they fund our research. So it's a good thing.
Right on. Right on. Well, hopefully this is the beginning of many different future projects that really provide both the fuel, the resources to continue. But also, I think as equally important is this type of communication, is the ability to do exactly what we're doing now. You're in New Zealand, I'm in San Francisco, California. And wherever you're watching somewhere around the world, we're able to communicate through this amazing thing called the internet. And you might have probably learned about this through some sort of social network, because that's where we and others are sharing all of this. So this hopefully becomes the beginning of an ongoing conversation that really inspires our profession to, as you said, unite more, fight less, and become perhaps a bit more articulate and passionate about some new beliefs and new possibilities. I'm inspired. I think it's phenomenal and great, and I'll just personally say
I'm in.
I'm in too. Exactly.
I'm in.
Thank you for doing the work that many haven't been willing for whatever those reasons are.
Thanks for helping me share it, Jason.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hopefully we'll do more. Why don't you maybe close this out by inviting people to come see you at the Rubicon Conference, and I'll do a final goodbye.
Yeah, I really do hope to see as many of you out there as possible. Please come and support us. It's a great opportunity to have a conversation. I don't necessarily like to lecture so much. I'm much more interested in having a conversation through questions, and we can help explore together what it is that we really do and how we can do it even better and how we can communicate it appropriately to the public and to other healthcare professionals.
Awesome. And there's a phenomenal all-star lineup of speakers. You can learn more about that and register at therubiconconference.com. Heidi, I am so grateful to you, both for your time, your talent, and for just having a good time with me. And for all of you watching, thanks for watching AmpLIFEied Live. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please leave a comment somewhere here on Facebook, hopefully a positive one. Please just keep it clean. They don't all have to be positive, but keep it appropriate. And please share this with other people. Please let others know. AmpLIFEied is really all about building a network of passionate chiropractors, people who are advocates of what we do, to be able to share these incredible messages with as many people as possible through this amazing thing called social network. So thanks for being a part of AmpLIFEied. Thanks for joining. Please keep sharing. And until next time, thank you, Heidi Haavik. I'm Dr. Jason Deitch.